Welcome everyone. I'm Pete Mohrbacher. I'm an artist. I do digital painting, drawing. It's my full-time job. I've been doing it for way longer than AI has been around. And, I come on here once a week and I talk about the process of being an artist. I do some art demos. I answer questions. And yeah, art questions related to the process of making art, much more so than Midjourney. I'm not an AI developer, and I don't actually work for Midjourney. I just go on here and answer questions and do demos related to traditional art. If you're at all curious about art, if you're playing with it and you're having some troubles, there is no question too basic, uh, you know, to ask for my help on it. Like, I love helping with basic questions. I love talking about art. And so once we start getting into the Q&A portion of this, if there's anything you ever wanted to ask about when it comes to this stuff, even if it's just simple technical stuff dealing with Photoshop, feel free to come on stage and we'll chit chat about it. Today, I don't have a lot prepped. I was thinking about I hadn't done a study in a couple of weeks. So I was thinking about taking one of my Midjourney outputs from earlier today and then doing a little bit of a study with it. Just going to pull one of these up. I ended up, the main thing I'm using Midjourney for these days is as custom reference material. It's difficult for me to figure out a way. It can be sometimes really challenging to figure out a way to get an image that's being created without a lot of direct control. I don't feel like I have a crazy level of command when it comes to text inputs. So I have to take, the cafe is now jumping in the way of my thing, right? So when it comes to me wanting to create a piece of art that is fully authentically mine, it can sometimes challenging to figure out how to get an AI in the middle of the process in a way where I get to maintain the level of control and voice that I normally have. And, one of the ways in which I'm able to do that is by creating, custom artworks from scratch, but using the various different images I get from places like Midjourney as reference material. Because when you're digging around for reference material online, typically you're looking around in some place like Pinterest, and you're grabbing photography and illustration and design work from other artists, finished stuff. And when you draw from it too specifically, it can lead to a situation where you're maybe just doing a very, very direct copy of another artist's work. It's not something I'm really setting up to do most of the time. So, I'll go ahead and I will make, I'll make the work in my own voice. And then when I get to a point where I have the question about, hey, what about a character with this kind of pose? What are some options as far as this pose might be concerned? Or like stylistically, what kind of cool textures am I going to get from flowing hair? I can start to, or like even really specific stuff. Like I want a view of a man's face from underneath with like a wide angle lens. Those sorts of questions can be answered really effectively if you can find the perfect image out on the web. But it's I found it to be a lot easier to just go ahead and use Midjourney to ask those sorts of questions and see what the bot's going to come up with. Right now, I've just got my reference image downloaded, and I'm just trying to get my windows laid out correctly so I can. Okay, excellent. So let me open up my screen share and then you guys can see what I'm looking at. So so I've been working on this series of illustrations. For a tarot deck. Firstly, I'm working on the 22 major arcana, and then I'm going to work on the 50-something minor arcana afterwards. And I'm like 4 illustrations away I'm redoing my High Priestess illustration. And High Priestess is sitting on top of a throne and has this scroll and has like flowing robes and whatnot. When I was asking for any kind of Midjourney's take on High Priestess, I was having a lot of trouble getting a version that wasn't like symmetrical. So rather than trying to ask it for everything, the colors of the clothes and the style of the face and all the different like accessories, like if there's supposed to be like a tapestry and 2 columns and all these extra details. Instead, what I really wanted to see what options I had were I wanted a more dynamic pose for a figure sitting on a throne. So I wanted a female figure sitting on a throne. And from there, I can build on a lot of these symbols and a lot of this other stuff that is going to bring me to a finished drawing that I'm then going to paint up. And, I got some really, really cool examples of like female figures sitting on top of a throne, reclining on a throne. And, they've got a nice dynamic pose to them. There's a real sense of drama. I asked for it in my style, so it gave me like lots of extra little curly cues and stuff inside the hair. And it's like, or maybe some of my settings don't fully register here. Just doing touch inputs. Okay, we'll see what happens. And so we got some hallmark Mohrbacher accents built into this. I'd say overall the style looks a little bit more like art germ than like me. But I also don't draw a lot of female figures, especially not very model-esque ones like this. So I'm kind of gonna be ditching this. I'm just gonna have a big hole for the face, as is tradition around my work. And yeah, but like this was a big help to me. I was really happy to have it today. And then rather than try to convert this over into a total High Priestess illustration, I thought that instead I just do a little bit of a study of it, having just spent a little time already drawing it. And that'll help us go over some of the basics of illustration here. Because, I'm just going to be copying off a a little bit of like academic work. In order to get this version of Photoshop running the way I wanted to, I ended up spending a lot of time. So this is on a laptop that's not mine and borrowing it from my wife. And it didn't have everything where I wanted it to. And so I spent a little bit of time yesterday evening trying to get everything to feel a lot better for me. And I was just going to go over that really quick. This is kind of in the weeds, but if you are struggling with Photoshop, there might be a couple of things that you can do to help improve your experience. You can see here that my brush stroke, I've got a nice dynamic brush stroke that's got pressure sensitivity on it. Lighter touch gets me a thinner line, while if I can press a little harder, I get a thicker line. The way it's able to read that is being done by a piece, like there's the tablet has its own software, got the Wacom software here. And then there's Wacom settings, which are layered somewhere else in there in this stack. And then in order to communicate the inputs that are being received from the tablet, there is then a piece of middleware, some drivers that then pass that information along to Photoshop. So there's this kind of software stack between the hardware and the final software that you're using. And the default for a long time was a driver called WinTab, which was installed along with the Wacom drivers. It works really well. It still has higher levels of pressure sensitivity than the current default drivers. But for some reason, like with it, I think it might be just an issue with the tablet that I'm using. The current modern day drivers go crazy and do all sorts of really awful things. It's something called Windows Ink, and there's the settings built into Windows PCs that the Windows Ink is turned on by default. Wacom drivers now have the Windows Ink thing checked by default. If you ever uncheck this, you need to, you will lose all the pressure sensitivity and the buttons and everything from your tablet, which is bad. So theoretically, if you wanted to get rid of all of the things that Windows Ink was doing poorly, you can just check this box off, but then you don't get any of the stuff that makes the tablet work well, like the pressure sensitivity, the buttons, and all the other things that really help the tablet feel good. Um, so the way to get it done is I recommend looking this up for the specific set of steps, but you need to re-enable WinTab. And to do that, you have to open up a notepad and put in a couple of lines of code and save it out as a configuration document into your folder, your installation folder on Photoshop. So if you're struggling at all with like weird bits of lag, like I have this, whenever I've shown off rendering, I've always showed that you can use the Alt key to sample colors and use it to create gradients and render. But I was struggling with this problem last week, where as I was hitting Alt to select colors, sometimes the correct color wouldn't come out. Because even though I was holding down the Alt key and like the cursor was changing, when I clicked, there'd be a lag and the click would register after the key had been released, which meant that I never got to select the color. It was making weird marks all over the place. It's driving me crazy. But when I disable Windows Ink and I re-enable WinTab, not only do I get higher levels of pressure sensitivity, I also get a much faster and more responsive reaction on all the buttons. And Photoshop ends up doing a much, much better job overall. So that's one of the reasons why I always switch it over, is because it's fairly consistent in terms of key presses, but I feel like it misses about 1 out of every 10. And it's just happening just often enough. And if you have a muscle memory for it, it drives me absolutely crazy. It's one of those things that I think that the average user might not notice is happening. They might just blame themselves for it when something happens they don't like and think, oh, it's okay, I'm getting better with this program. That'll stop eventually. But for me, I was losing my mind. I was just like gritting my teeth, driving me up a wall. And so now that I've got WinTab taking over for Windows Ink, I'm feeling so much better on here. And there's a little like tooltip box that pops up next to your cursor whenever you're holding down Shift, Control, or Alt. That's one of the ways you can tell that Windows Ink is taking over, because Windows Ink causes those little tooltip pop-ups to appear. I had somewhere say that tooltip was the reason why the lag was occurring, and so I spent days trying to like work out this problem of how to get rid of the tooltips, in order to stop the lag, in order to make it so that the eyedropper tool was operating correctly. And so I spent days like digging through like registry inputs, fighting with all this stuff at a very, very like low level inside the operating system. And then eventually it just discovered, what I really need is old tablet drivers, because those old drivers, those are the classics, the golden old. So yeah, that's a long way of saying, if Photoshop is behaving strangely, go ahead and see if you can get Windows Ink disabled and replaced with WinTab. When you do, I feel like everything gets like 100 times. The feeling of it feels like 100 times better for me. Even if it's a fractional difference, it's like compounding. I love it. So I don't have a lot of brushes or anything set up here. I just have my basic sable brush. It's got a little bit of flow. It's got the flow turned down, so that you can see I get these soft edges at the terminals of the brush stroke, and I got a little bit of pressure sensitivity. That undo button. So that's okay. So I'm just going to be using this round brush for the majority of this thing. I'm going to see if I can create a scheme that's kind of inspired by this figure here. I'm going to poke away at this, and I don't have like a ton of super insightful things I'm going to be saying about like making swirly marks or nudging little corrections around or anything like that. So I'm available to talk to you guys about things that are way less boring than WinTab drivers. If Ancient Chaos wants to open the stage and see who wants to raise their hand. If you want to talk, the only way to do it is to hit the raise your hand button. Ancient Chaos is operating the stage. He's got control over who comes on and when. And yeah, if you're DMing me, I don't have Discord open. Well, I can't look at Discord and also do this at the same time.
Hi, Peter.
Hello.
I have a question about whether or not, so do you often work in grayscale and then colorize?
Yes, always.
What is the best way to colorize a grayscale? Um, I've recently discovered that it is easier for me to do those values in grayscale first, but my colorizations look a little, not as punchy as they normally do.
Yeah, I mean, you said best. I bristle at that idea a little bit, that there is a best. It's really a matter of like some people I know that just cannot do going from grayscale to color. It doesn't make any sense to them. And that's fair. Like the goal here is to find a process that allows us to make the most sense of the experiences we're having making art. And so the goal is for you not to find the best version of how to colorize a black and white image, but to find the way in which it makes the most sense to you. So I'm a little early on this to demonstrate on this image, but I can grayscale this thing and then do a little demo in here. I'm curious about what method you've been using up to this point, so I can maybe give some counterpoints.
I So I discovered through a previous suggestion of yours that it is easier for me to do the values in grayscale instead of worrying about the color value while I'm
Okay.
and so I've been doing that, and I've just been kind of like playing with different blend modes, color glazing, not full, you know, color, because of course I wanted to keep the values.
Sure.
I didn't know if that was the correct way to do that or not.
Again, there's no correct. There's no correct. It's like it really is a matter of it. As I've been doing a lot of studies, I've actually been experimenting with this a lot to do methods that I normally don't do. And so one of the things I would recommend, is to give a try to doing some sort of daily activity where you're going to take a swing at the same problem multiple times. That way you don't feel like, when you've got a really amazing grayscale image, the number one thing you want to avoid is screwing it up. But the only way for you to really explore and get better at this is to choose to screw it up. So I would say, whatever you can do to get yourself in a mindset where you're comfortable, like ruining your image. Thankfully, we're working digitally and you can just peel layers away. It doesn't matter. But like, there's still like this resistance to wanting to screw things up. And I think like keeping an open mind about that is the number one first thing I would recommend philosophically. But what blending modes are you using to try to add color here?
Didn't have Photoshop open, but I've been trying soft light, overlay, hard light, a mixture of blend modes depending on what colors I'm trying to achieve. Some of them muddy more than the others, like the warmer colors seem to muddy over the gray.
Those are good. I love all those blend modes a lot. So for the sake of demoing, I'm gonna tell people right off, if you're looking to add color to an image, using blend modes, the one I would recommend the least, the one I'm confident most people should avoid, is actually color. You would think that adding color using the color blend mode would be a good idea, but I think it's a terrible idea. It's the worst idea possible. One of the simplest blending modes is actually multiply. And it behaves in a way that is, to my eye, a little bit like maybe the most like traditional painting. Because like all the other ones that you've like heard me talk about and you've like tried out yourself, they have these kinds of peculiar effects to them, like hard light, which I love. Oops, it's wrong.
Yeah.
It brings in tons and tons of saturation. It really messes with your values, which is kind of why I like it. But it's also, because I think any tool that can break an image is definitely worth using. But if this isn't like what it looks like when you start glazing with traditional materials, but neither is like because there's like you're sort of glazing with what looks like a totally matte, thick, opaque paint. Looks generally pretty awful. Multiply is interesting because what it's theoretically doing is it's darkening. It's always darkening the color. So, you think, well, we could paint a light paint. You could use glazes with a light color. Why would multiply a blending mode which only ever darkens images? Why would that feel most natural? And I don't really have a great answer, but I can tell you that it does feel a lot like when you take a sort of oversaturated tone and you thin it out with like paint thinner or water or whatever, and you let the pigment inside the paint kind of glaze over the top of an image. Like, you get this very similar result where it's like it's enriching the image, it's making it like more saturated, and it's darkening it, and it's kind of it's reducing the value range to a degree. One of the things I did here was I lightened up this image before I started trying to lay in multiply, just because I wanted more range to sort of let the colors sink in and darken everything. And so you're not able to get saturated highlights by using multiply, but what you do get is like nice, even, natural looking color, so it doesn't get crazy muddy. And then you can go ahead and start to add highlights by painting in on top of it. So this is a really different approach than what I've demoed before, but it's something that is a lot more similar to like traditional glazing methods, like with as an oil painter. So it's worth experimenting with as like, because it's mentally feels like a very, very different kind of exploration. As you can see, even with a very light, bright color here, as I'm glazing it over, I'm like getting a kind of dull effect in the skin tone overall. And so in order to get a brighter color base or highlights on the hair, you either have to start erasing out bits, which leave you with this kind of desaturated look because you're just erasing back to like gray or white. And then the other option is to, on a new layer above it, start to pick what colors your highlights are really going to be and start to paint those tones in on top of it. I typically try to go into color at a stage where things are not quite this established. Because like I found that if I have like all the rendering done already and everything's really precise, process of adding color to a black and white image can become really, really tedious. Getting it all to like be the right color and the right value when everything's already rather precise can be extremely challenging. So I usually make sure to do this at a point when things are a lot looser, so that as like, bits accidentally start mixing together and get a little bit of roughness and randomness, we can sort of look into that for solutions and fun ideas as we like explore painting. But you can see as I start to mix in some brighter colors up on top of the ones that have been multiplied down, you start to get a little bit of natural color mixing, and like we don't end up with really muddy tones. We end up with using the multiply as a kind of base layer. We're able to then build highlights on top of it and get something that feels kind of naturalistic, not only in terms of like, realistic skin tones or whatever, but we start to get something that feels a little bit more like traditional paint. You don't really have to work for it. So, it's sort of a byproduct of the way that we're using the tool here.
That makes a lot of sense. The daily exercises are coming along really well.
Oh yeah, you're doing dailies?
Yeah, well, you suggested it a few weeks ago over in Huckleberry, and I've been doing it. And from the first day, my first attempt stuck to 1 hour, and it kind of looked like something maybe a fifth grader would have done. But
That first day is so hard.
I know. By the seventh day, it was all coming back to me, and I was shocked. I was so excited that it was sculpting into like something real, and so two
How many
different
days?
uh in 7 days. But
7 days?
I
That's
have
it?
I have a minor in art from like a couple decades ago, so
Okay.
I had to refresh it. um, I I've been doing landscapes, so doing these portraits, figure painting's always been horrible for me. But so I started with the portraits, and now I'm kind of moving out a little to fuller bodies. But it's I even tried doing one and adding a whole bunch of like making it. I've been using like Unsplash and Pexels images as references, and the last one I turned into an alien. And I just was excited that I was able to do any of that anymore. And that's 2 weeks in. So
Yeah. I
in
mean,
where I am in 2 more weeks.
I know that's been my experience too. Like I've been on vacation for the last few weeks, and so I haven't been doing my dailies. And I'm coming. I've just got a few more days out here in New York, and then I'm gonna be back in the swamp, back in Florida. In my bunker, doing dailies again on Huckleberry, and I'm looking forward to it because I feel like I made such tremendous progress in like 20 something days of messing with it. And this is, I do a decent amount of art. Like I'm still a professional artist, so it's not like I'm that behind on practice. But boy, like, yeah, getting and doing it daily, I felt like I was moving at light speed through art school. It was such a good feeling.
And on top of that, I attended. I don't know if you're familiar with the Niji Academy that like Rhubarb put on last Friday. Every week,
I saw the announcement for it, but I missed it.
it's thus far. I mean, only had one class. It's like a more of a line drawing kind of thing. But
Mhm.
there was a sketching exercise this week that I found very helpful. Same thing happened. Horrible first day, getting better by the end of the week. But just doing a little thing every single day. And she said the same thing: try not to go over an hour, or you'll make yourself sick. But it's really been helpful, and I feel kind of stupid that I avoided my stretching every day, I guess I would call it. You wake up and stretch so you can greet the day. So I've been stretching my art skills.
Yeah, I mean, you feel stupid. I'm the one who feels really stupid. I never did studies ever in like an entire art career. I don't know how good I would be if I actually was doing daily drawing and regular studies throughout the last 20 years. I don't know what it would have added up to, but I guarantee it would have been pretty cool.
What a
So
theory that I gave up years ago, drawing figures. I always just tell people, ugh, I'm horrible at figures. Unless I'm doing concept art, I can sketch a little guy with a staff in the distance. That's pretty easy, but these close-up detailed faces and hands and things, it's been a really good learning experience, and I appreciated the advice.
yeah, well, there's no point. It's too late to start. Everybody, there's plenty of people I've known over the course of my teaching career who are, a little bit later in life, done art in the past, looking to get back to it, or had always been curious about it but never really explored it themselves. And no one has ever regretted that, as far as I can tell. It's like, it's a sort of thing that everybody, I think, shares some desire to want to do, and everyone's got the permission to do it. It's just that we kind of hold ourselves back. And there's no reason not to. The worst thing is like that first day where you're trying, or like today where I haven't done studies for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I feel like I've completely lost whatever progress I've made. I'm over here, unfamiliar hardware in front of a crowd of people, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
boy, I'm going to stink it up today. And that feeling's tough, but whatever. No one's ever died from trying to make artwork and being bad at it. Well, not that we know of. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we want to put the appropriate disclaimers.
Uh, well, thank you very much, Peter, and I hope you enjoyed your vacation.
Yeah, I'm so ready. I'm not a good. I've never really gone on vacation before, so it's like a experiment for me. Is like, hey, while I was doing my dailies, or just like while I was working on other stuff, and just chit chatting with other artists and people who were studying, and yeah, turning it into a little bit of a group experience, which was really fun. And want to get back there. I'm going to be doing some demos on there. We've got a small group of really cool people that are all going to be doing demos, little online webinars and stuff. Trying to encourage everybody to just sort of get in there and make whatever, without worries about if it's going to be the greatest piece of art or the worst piece of art. Doesn't really matter that much, because it's really about the process that we picking that apart leads to a lot of really interesting results. A lot of interesting discoveries we find about ourselves, about, the art making process. And like, you compare notes with other people and discover that like so many people have really, really similar experiences whenever they try to make art. And, when you start to compare notes with other people like that, you start to discover that like, the feelings that you have about making things and like the kind of stuff that you're interested in, that like there's a lot of other people that share it. And there's something that's really exciting about connecting with people through all that. So I've always, it's been a major source of happiness in my life. It's one of the reasons I've stuck with art so long, is because of the relationships that it's allowed me to build inside the art community. And, I want to make sure that there's spaces for people to have those experiences the same way I did. So that's like the real underlying philosophy behind Huckleberry, is trying to get people together to share their art experiences. So, hello?
First time. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through wonderfully.
Thanks. Well, it's my first time here. Really enjoying it so far. Thank you for doing this. I would like to hear a little bit more about what she mentioned before about daily studies. What are our goals when we're doing it? What is it about? Sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself. It's something that you already talked about.
No, I guess we didn't clarify that. Dailies, it's something that I want to start adding more clarity about, because that is a really good question. For me, I decided I was going to do daily photo studies. So I would go and find some photo out on Pinterest or wherever. And then I was going to try to reproduce that image as closely as possible, sort of side by side, the way I'm doing here in Photoshop, in an effort to try to, get stronger at my painting, drawing, and painting skills. Um, and if you're an amateur, if you're just getting into it for the love of it, and don't have a ton of experience with drawing and painting, there's a big question about, what are we doing here? What are we looking for? What is the plan? And especially if you're like not even given an image to start from, to like, you can theoretically pick anything to study from. It could be a landscape, it could be an AI output, it could be something from a fashion magazine, it could be another painting, classical painting, be you copying your favorite piece of fan art from Twitter. Really, it could be anything. Like, the point of the exercise is in picking apart the way in which we kind of reconstruct images. Because what happens is, like, you think you should know where all the stuff is supposed to go, because the answer is right there. This is like the box of the puzzle. It's got the image of what the puzzle is supposed to look like. So all you need to do is put it together. And that sounds really simple right up to the point where you try to do it. And everybody who ever tries it immediately starts having like a lot of frustration. It is a very, very difficult thing to do, to go ahead and make a bunch of paint marks on a page that look anything like a reference. And when we do it, we stretch out our brains, not just generally in the sense that we're getting like smarter by trying to reproduce these images. It's that like there's a series of discrete skills that by default everyone is bad at. And as you get better at them and you strengthen those skills, you start to be able to draw stuff from imagination as well as from reference far, far better. One of those skills will just be spotting the relative proportions. Like, I'm struggling right now at trying to figure out, how wide are the shoulders? Where are the hands in relation to the legs? And, where is it the hand supposed to be coming out over here? Got this little negative shape around the outside is not quite matching up. Does that mean I have the hand totally misplaced? Should I be moving it? What's going on? Trying to figure out, trying to spot where all the features are supposed to go in a structural way is something I've always been pretty bad at. And it was one of the things that I found that I was able to get significantly better at very quickly by forcing myself to engage with that problem every single day. Some people are naturally really good at that, but they might also struggle with something else, like trying to add color to an image, trying to render things out, making smooth gradient transitions on places like the face, painting chaotic, complicated elements like hair. There are so many different little discrete challenges that pop up, and the goal of doing it daily is to out where you're struggling, and then challenge yourself to try to do the things that are hard for you. If you can do all the things that are difficult over and over again daily, you're going to get a lot better at them really, really quickly. The first day that you try to do any of this stuff, you're going to feel a ton of, and that's like a good thing, because that's your brain giving you signals that you are messing everything up. And the longer you do it, the more you are going to be correcting your behavior along the, thanks to those corrective signals you're receiving from your brain that's telling you all the ways in which you're screwing it up. You are going to experiment and alter your behavior little by little and progressively begin to make more and more accurate choices, more and more effective choices. And that's going to lead to you getting better and better results. And there's no really a top end where you just go, well, I guess I know everything now. And I'm just good at all this stuff. This is the sort of process that you can literally be doing for the rest of your life. At the very least, you could be spending decades progressively getting incrementally better at all of the, minor discrete skills that lead into drawing and painting. And as you get better and better at them, you start to be able to do fancier and fancier things. Things will come easier to you, or you'll be able to make unique discoveries that help develop your own personal style. There's lots of cool outcomes that arise from challenging yourself to try to draw and paint all the time. I never really did studies for a long time because I was really focused on trying to always draw from my imagination. And so I thought, well, I don't really get that from doing a study. So I'm just going to always be starting from my imagination and see if I can get to the end of the image, which was good for learning a certain set of skills. But it also left me a little bit lacking when it came to, my ability to use reference or my knowledge of anatomy, perspective. And so now that I'm going back in and doing some more of these studies, I'm finally getting checked in the jaw over and over again when it comes to trying to engage with perspective and anatomy and learning about how to spot anatomy from a reference, things like that. And as I'm getting better at it every single day, I'm finding that it's easier for me to reproduce those same skills when I'm working from imagination. So I'm finding that my sketchbook drawings are getting a lot better as a result of doing this. I'm finding that like my ability to sit down and paint is getting faster and faster. I'm getting exposed to a lot more reference material, which has been really inspiring. So I've been thinking about the kinds of designs that I want to make and where they look my style creatively. So it is self-directed to a point because everyone kind of wants and needs different things when it comes to their own creative direction. So it's tough to say like this is what you should do during a daily and this is what you should get out of it. But I would say that like if you haven't done too much of this, grab whatever reference images you want and then see if how well of a copy you can make in 1 hour is a good goal. I personally do about 2 hours, which is, I don't know. I'm the worst studier of all time. So maybe it's because I'm so bad that I'm always doing 2 hours. So if you're going to be a really good studier, do an hour. If you're going to be a bad studier like me, hey, just do, wait.
I
Go
guess
ahead.
an hour can give me a sort of it's a goal in it of itself. Like up until an hour, I have to get the sketchy parts done. It doesn't really matter like how close to the photorealism or the the source is. I just really have to get the study done under an hour. So I guess that could be a goal.
Yeah, like your speed, just focusing on speed repeatedly is going to give you results in terms of like getting faster. You're going to get faster a lot quicker. And so that could be a thing, but I like to because I'm just there's always a point where I want to go deeper on it. And like you always can go deeper and deeper and deeper, but like there's a point where I just feel like never quite at the point where I'm really challenging myself at 1 hour, other than on the speed. And there's always something that I like want to try to like learn more about or get better at that I haven't gotten done until I've spent about 2 hours on it. And so, yeah, if I was like really efficient and a really great sketcher, really good at like nailing the gesture of the thing really quickly, like I think I could probably stick to an hour. But I did that for a couple of times. I've done 1 hour studies, a couple of occasions, and then I tried to hold myself to that, and I'm just too undisciplined, and I had to like get 2 hours. But I really try to not let it take over my whole day because it can be. I have other stuff I need to do. I can't just sit around and study all day. Sometimes it feels like I kind of want to though.
So you said a little bit that the first times can be frustrating for you. How long did it take for you to start enjoying the process?
Basically 2 days, I think. Um, the day one for me, I mean, day one for me was also during one of these sessions. And so I was doing a live demo and doing a bad job of it. And so I was like, oof, not only am I feeling really bad about like my painting ability, but I'm like struggling in public, which is like extra learning sensation, you know? Um, but I could say that from the people I've talked to who have started doing dailies, that like they're really scared first day, like because it forces you to say like, okay, well, how good am I at this? And then you're going to get an answer, and everyone would like to be really good at all the stuff that they aspire to do, right? Like you think, I want to get good at art. You don't want to like sit down and draw and have it be bad. You want to discover that you're actually a natural talent and that you are way ahead of the curve and that you're going to have an easier time than the average person. And that it's a good thing you're such a huge genius. And then you sit down and do it and you're like, you stink at it. And you go, oh man, I've got a long way to go. And like, that the contrast to the sort of hopefulness of it, then crashing into reality, that hurts. So, you just have to like be prepared to be like, okay, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to be kind of bad at it. And that's fine because it's going to be really fun to get better. and it is really fun to get better. Like every little win that you get along the way, like it feels really good in the same kind of like deep way that like stinking at it feels bad. It's like when you do something and you like know that you did it wrong, your brain will give you a little negative jolt and tell you that you stink. But then when you do something and it turns out well, you get this little bit of dopamine or whatever, the reward signal, and it feels awesome. I don't think it takes that long to start getting to the point where you start getting these nice little reward signals. I think that you can start to get to that pretty quick.
I'll definitely try. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the reward signals we get in our brain can be really, really addictive. And you get that sometimes from social media. You get it from, watching through short form video. You find something cool that you want to share. You message somebody that you want to talk to. Like, we have all these little ways of getting great bits of positive feedback from our brains. But there's something about this kind of like wholesome nature of making art that is really, really cool. Like you do something, you get that little bit of feedback, you get that little bit of positive stimulus, and at the end you have something that you can share and be proud of, and that's like a step that's even better than the usual kind of digital stimulus we get.
Yo, can you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
How are you? Long time no see.
Doing good.
How was your vacation?
Excellent. I highly recommend it if you ever get a chance. Vacations turned out pretty good.
Awesome. Well, how's your search going for a good sculptor? Before I ask my primary question.
It's been hot and cold. I mean, I'm lucky. I got to work with a pretty good sculptor on my first my first sculpture that I made, and then I've gotten to talk to a couple of really good ones over the course of the last couple of weeks. But because I've been kind of away from the office, I haven't really got a chance to dig too deep into it.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question relating to art this time. So I really struggle figuring out the value relationship of skin, and I'm really struggle with the value spectrum of skin, and I end up blasting it with light or not enough contrast. And I wonder, do you tend to start with your semitones, or do you start with your local color when you're addressing skin tone?
No. Skin tone, it's like skin tone's one of those things where it can be a lot of things. It can look really, really different depending on the what's happening with the surface of the skin, as well as the type of skin, color of skin it is, the light conditions. And so there's not a universal way of really addressing it. Personally, I always like to start with values that are a little darker than what I'm ultimately going to go for. Right now I've still got a lot of neutral tone from my background color, but typically when I start to get into rendering or building values for a piece, I will start things off by creating a really strong silhouette of a darker base like this.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, it allows me to start to build up the values of things like skin tone with a lot more accuracy than trying to knock in local colors from the beginning.
Yeah, in miniature
I
painting,
struggle tremendously with getting local colors. Spotting local colors from the start, to me, feels just completely impossible.
I feel that way about it too, because I watched someone like Miniatures Dan paint something, and he starts with effectively local color and mid-tone, and then he'll put in the shadow later. So he'll go like local, midtone, highlight, shadow.
Hmm.
And for him, it's an efficiency thing, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to grasp that. But I still find myself, because I kind of start with what you do, which is start dark with something like, kind of like the color right before your local tone, which is your shadow. And even still, I struggle to get enough light and enough contrast, which I guess is the eternal struggle of skin tones. But
yeah, I mean, when I've got really, really dark tones like this, one of the things I like about it also is I can leave it pretty rough. And then, I can start to get a little more precise once I start building up values. And it's like, once you start treating it as like shining light on a figure, I find it's a lot easier to sort of sculpt it and figure out what the volume of the figure is based on where the light's hitting rather than where the shadow's casting.
yeah.
So what I'm typically doing is I'm finding where like the center of a highlight is, and I'm building outwards from there. And then
Well, you'll do something like you'll start with your actual highlight and you'll build down.
I'm not sure how to put it exactly, but I try to like start with the center of the highlight and kind of spread outwards from there.
Okay.
And then I have to go in later, and if I have like a cast shadow or something like, then if like the bridge of the nose is like creating a cast shadow, I find myself having to like go in and add a cast shadow after the fact in order to start to finish things off. Like we have this cast shadow like across the edge of the face here. Like I would probably be building up all these highlights, and then I would go in and be adding in these flatter areas of cast shadow as like a final touch. Because to me, like trying to draw a shadow is like you're trying to draw a projection. And it's just like, it's so hard for me to calculate, where is this projection going to land based off the edge of where like the last place the light hit is. It's so much easier to aim for like the center of the highlight and then kind of smush things outwards. When you start to get like, even if you start like kind of rough with like, hey, here's the center of where these lights are, and here's kind of where the top end of the light is. If you can make sure that you're getting all the way to where you think the very top end of that light is going to be, then you just need to push, sort of smush that around and push downwards from there.
Interesting. You have a kind of similar approach to miniature than when he paints a miniature, because he'll do like I said, midtone, and then he'll pick out his brightest lights, and then that kind of establishes where he goes from there. And anyways, yeah, I think I should try that. So thank you again.
Yeah, give it a shot. But like, it's one of those things where it's like you might see one of the big traps I see people get stuck in is they will find their favorite artist in the universe, and they'll go, well, how does that person work? I need whatever. I'll have whatever he's having, right? And that will often lead people to try out work methods that are bad fits for them, and they will, feel really dumb for not getting it. Like a lot of times I would come across people who are struggling tremendously because they're insistent on working in a particular way, and it's like invading them, and it makes them just feel like an idiot. And it's like, the truth is that everyone's work method is personal because we're all kind of decoding imagery in a different way. And so we all need to like find a work method that like matches the way in which we think about light and form, and like, it's ultimately going to be a little bit different than the influences that we take. So it's worthwhile to ask a lot of questions of how different artists do stuff and how they think about it, and try those things out. Like absolutely try out the method that I'm demonstrating here. And then, if any part of it works for you, keep it. And anything that doesn't work for you, just carelessly throw it out. Treat it as though it's the dumbest suggestion you've ever heard, and you won't be any worse off for it. There's like some way of working this out that is like special to your brain. And the more you experiment, the closer you're going to be to figuring out what that is.
Dope. Well, thank you so much, and I'll let someone else get in line.
Okay, fantastic. It was good talking.
Yeah, see ya.
One of the things I feel like I've learned from doing these studies, and something that I'm not struggling with so much today as I did when I was first getting started, is like, rather than worried about where I think all the lines are supposed to be, like where's the edge of the face, where is the line on the eyelid, stuff like that, looking at this from like a blurrier perspective of like, what is the general shape of what this eye is? And starting off with blurrier, more general shapes that are, maybe not logically the way I think it's supposed to be shaped, but the way that it really appears to me as I'm seeing it. And by following like my impression of what the thing looks like rather than logically what my brain is telling me it's supposed to be shaped like, I found myself getting much, much better results more quickly. And so I was always able to stumble my way eventually into something that I felt like was pretty good. But like I've been able to get something that looks better as a work in progress, as well as like gets to where I'm going faster by getting more comfortable with just like blocking things in a little loose first and then trying to tighten them down. Yeah, I'm not having quite as much struggle here with the proportion of the face, starting with that much looser impression of it. And so I might not actually get too detailed with this right off the bat, but at least I won't have that incredibly ugly, like weird, you know, mushy face staring at me from judging me as I'm trying to paint all the other stuff in. And now that things are getting a lot more clear, then we can start to go and find these like really distinct edges and carve them out. Feel a little bit more confident in it. Hello. So when we were going, hello? Can't see my Discord window, but it seems like we may be getting visited by extraterrestrials right now. Seems like we're having some AV issues with the person on stage. Because I'm having a hard time hearing them and understanding what they're saying. Presumably you guys are having a similar experience. Without my second monitor, it's a little tough to monitor what's going on in chat. My typical method, my typical setup involves me having a nice big 4K monitor. So I've got both these images pretty large inside my screen. I'm finding that doing this on a laptop is a little bit more difficult than my usual experience. So might be contributing to a little bit of the struggle that I'm having. Looking for a convenient scapegoat to explain why I'm not as good at this as I feel like I should be.
Apparently, I was also having mic issues. Trying to tell them about having mic issues.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were hearing the same thing as me. It sounded like a little bit like maybe a sort of contact moment. We were getting a call from Discord, call from an asteroid, perhaps.
Hi, Peter.
Hello.
Hi. I've talked to you a little bit previously before. You actually did my hellish girl picture last week with the weird teeth and the crazy eyes.
Oh my God, it was so distressing.
I know. It was like Uncanny Valley, but it was really cool to see you because I was so excited when I made it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to put it in Photoshop and I'm going to edit it and fix it. It was too much. I couldn't do it at all.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. But I actually had a quick question, a couple questions actually. I heard you're going to be doing Twitch recordings or Twitch streams.
It looks like it's going to happen. I just got an email from Twitch and they're like, yeah, it looks like things are go for till August 1st.
Oh, awesome. Are those going to be recorded at all, like so that we can go back and watch them at a later time?
I don't have a ton of experience with Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
So I know like they don't have the greatest VOD system of all time. But I do have a friend who has a lot of experience with YouTube and Twitch who's going to be helping me out with the engineering side of things on that. And we are going to do what we can to try to record the sessions. They're going to be too long to digest as entirely video on demand, but we will definitely try to like edit and pull out some clips and stuff for if there's any really good moments to share them. Because like I would really like to be recording times when I'm giving people feedback or doing studies or like having instructional moments that I could share. It's just that like, yeah, not every single second of what's ultimately going to be about 40 to 60 hours a month is going to turn into like really solid broadcastable content.
For sure. Yeah, it's just a lot of these I would really love to rewatch and just kind of like see what you're doing and listen to your advice. And it's kind of hard to remember everything, but it'd be cool if you could do like a quick edit or something for them. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we'll pull out some VOD moments, so we'll clip some stuff theoretically, and then I'm also hoping to put together a more functional, like solid curriculum, and like I'm also so it's like I was about to say, oh yeah, I'll be on Discord all the time, but actually, yeah, I'm gonna switch a lot of my like daily Discord broadcasting over to daily Twitch broadcasting, just so it's gonna be easier for more people to participate. Because it's like, doing everything on Discord is like especially ephemeral. Like these sessions there is absolutely no system on Discord to try to capture these. So unless someone is very diligently capturing their screen and audio setup, or like if I am, Like those are the only ways that this is ever going to like make it past this one moment in time. I'm glad to hear that there's demand for it. That definitely helps encourage me to do a better job when it comes to recording and like making sure that VODs are getting made for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Me and my friend both, we watch it all the time. But yeah, we're always talking about how we'd like to be able to go back and review things and just kind of like rewatch something if there was something really interesting. That would be cool.
Yeah. I wish there was a way for people to do sort of community clipping of what we're doing here in case there's something that like stuck out to them. They say, oh man, that's a really great moment. We should all remember that. Or that would be great to be able to go back to it. And then it wouldn't be on me to like have to figure out what moments should be clipped and go through the video editing process, kind of stuff. It's done a lot. It's like one of the reasons I haven't done a lot of educational content over the last decade where I haven't had a regular job is because I really hate video production. I hate going through old clips of my voice and my video and stuff and trying to figure out what parts do we cut, what parts do we leave. And so it wasn't until I started working with a friend of mine who is a professional video producer that we started to entertain this as like a larger project, because video production is something that I just am not willing to commit to as my part of my regular day-to-day. I stink at it and I hate it. I have no aspirations to get good at it. So it's only through the work of other people that I think I'm ultimately ever going to be able to produce any kind of produced video content on demand.
For sure. Okay, that's cool. And okay, another question. Are we ever going to get a redo of the very first one that you did?
Oh, it's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Yeah. Let me get settled again so I'm feeling like I want to feel confident. I want to do it from like a really confident place. Maybe number 100. Maybe you don't want to do all that. Or, I was like thinking, am I going to keep this study thing back to like 30 days? Is it going to be like a 30-day challenge, or is it going to be like a 60-day challenge? Is it going to be 1 year? What is it going to be? Still don't know. I mean, one of the things I've really enjoyed about doing the dailies, it has been the community aspect of it. Because at first I was like out there just doing them, and a lot of people were really excited to like log on to Discord and watch me do it. And I'm like, why don't you guys get in here and do this? So instead of just sitting around watching me, why don't you get in there? And then when it started to actually catch on, other people were like, I'm really learning a lot from doing these. And I saw them really pushing themselves to try to commit and participate. Like now it's like this kind of like community feeling of it is really exciting. And so I don't really want to be like, I'm going to do this for this long and I'm going to get better and then I'm going to move on to something else. It really is like, I always want to have these kind of community art experiences. And it's feeling to me like dailies are a really good vehicle for having a community art experience, because it's largely unstructured. People can have their own goals to it. And it encourages everyone to do a thing which is guaranteed to make anyone better at art, which is just do it every day. So it's like, if I'm going to manifest that as like a thing I want, more people to participate in and like do alongside me, like I kind of need to just keep it up theoretically forever. So we'll see how that goes. I got a friend who does Drawtober. He runs Drawtober, and so every October it's like a massive community art event. And so his October every year turns into like a huge pile of work that is like really intense. It's a major part of his year every year. And so, I'm like, what if I did that year round? What if Drawtober never ended?
All the Drawtober.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, I'm going to do you're going to do Drawtober. I've been doing Draw 2023, it never started and it's never stopping, and it's gonna be doing art forever. I think I can do it. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, yeah. So I should find a good milestone to go back and like. I think I'm just talking about milestones here. Like I should just should find a milestone to go back and like redo the first one. I don't really want to. I think I won't. I really don't want to like enshrine it as being like a special piece. Like, because the point of these are not to like be special pieces. The point of them is to spend time working on art every day. Something I haven't been doing on the but like, with the work days, like just to keep coming back to art as a persistent practice and to treat it not as a thing that generates useful material, but as something which is inherently good to do for its own sake. That's sort of the whole point. And I want to encourage other people to do that. So it doesn't really necessarily fall to any one individual thing. Though some of these dailies, I've had little creative breakthroughs, stylistic breakthroughs that I get really excited about, and it makes me wonder at what point am I going to be posting these on social media or something. It makes me a little nervous to do it because I worry at some point I'm going to start making them for the sake of them being content rather than them being genuinely educational or experimental. And I worry that might step in the way of some of the best aspects of it.
It's a slippery slope, right?
It could be. I already live on that slippery slope because I'm constantly trying to make art for the sake of it being, my creative vision, but I also am trying to build a social media audience and build a business on top of it. And it's really tricky to balance those two things. So I really enjoyed. It's so easy to screw it up. You're right.
Yeah, well, you just fall into it because it's like, oh, that's an easy thing I can post for the day or whatever. I've already done it. Might as well post it, and away it goes.
Yeah, or, it's like, hey, what kind of painting do I want to make? And then the thoughts start creeping in. Well, what kind of things do people want to see? What am I known for? Who am I? You start getting to existential questions pretty fast.
Oh, no.
What you really want to do is make something that you really love, for the sake of, loving it and the process. And when you do that, people do notice. When you do that, people tend to, people's attention tends to follow along because, one of the big challenges of media in the current day and age is authenticity. You want to make something that is authentically an expression of your taste. And people want to find creators who are creating authentically. And so how do you create authentically, but also cynically? How do you do it for the express purpose of gaining followers, but also do it in a way that but if followers want to see an authentic take? It is a bit of a trick to balance those two things. And I think the solution to that trick is generally to try to avoid considering what the needs of an audience are. And instead, just focus on your process, your taste, your identity. And trying to will yourself into that state is such a difficult task. And so I'm permanently locked in a struggle with it. And, it's been really enjoyable to have a little section of every day that doesn't force me to engage with that. So, yeah, I don't know. I think, so currently I'm leaning towards not posting studies on social media ever for the sake of keeping them pure. But who knows? I'm not somebody who's big on dogmas.
You have the right to change your mind whenever you want.
Exactly. This is my party.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really like watching these, and I've been kind of, doing the dailies, but not every day because it's just a whole thing. But yeah, I can definitely see a bit of an improvement on myself for sure.
I thought you were going to say on mine.
And mine, yeah.
You're starting to get pretty good.
Yeah, I think this art thing might work out for you,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks so much, Peter. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. I do think it's really funny because I do feel like I know where my weak points are as an artist very, very distinctly. And I run up against them constantly when I'm doing studies. And then, so I keep thinking, maybe I'm starting to get good at this. And so it always sounds, I know it sounds so obnoxious to other people when I'm saying out loud, wow, I'm look at this, I'm actually getting good at art. When it's that's my reputation as being a guy who's good at art. But to me, it feels like I am just discovering this stuff and just getting into it, and like maybe learning my way around a little bit, and there's this sort of hopeful aspiration for potentially being good in the way that I want to be good someday. But it's like, that's not what it to be a professional artist is not to be good at all the things that you want to be good at, or to even have a conception of yourself as being excellent at art. I mean, most of the artists I know don't have that self-image that they are excellent at art. It is like, it's a incredibly challenging thing. There's a lot of self-judgment involved. So I find that we all tend to be pretty tough on ourselves about where we are, in terms of skill level. So like having a process that I can go through that just makes me feel optimistic about the future, rather than kind of feeling down on myself about where I am, is really nice. It's really positive. It's like, that's the mindset I want to encourage for others too. One of the reasons I'm bringing it up so much. Like, we all want to be able to like have this sensation, feeling like we're accomplishing something, like we're getting somewhere. And even if there's the aspiration isn't really to get to a singular location in the future. It's to feel as though we're making progress towards that inevitable future goal someday down the line. And that feeling of like incremental progress to me is like so much more valuable than this like idea that I'm ever going to be somewhere someday for real. Because like, I'm not sure there's really a destination at the end. I was watching The Bear, very popular television show right now on Hulu. And there's somebody in season 2 who's reading a book, an inspirational book. And in the book, the author says, failure is not a destination. It's like, oh, that's a good one. It's a good one. Like the idea that like, we don't just fail and then we're just failed and we're there in failure forever. But failure is a sort of like stepping stone that, leads somewhere else further down the line. Like, oh, hell yeah, that's exactly correct. That's the experience. It's like, you have all these little failures that you get pinged on all the time that you feel bad about because it's happening. And the whole point of it is that like, you're moving past those little failures with each increment. And the satisfaction of moving past them is like a big driving motivation for me. It's like never really like deciding to stop and stick around at any point where things didn't work out. Instead, always pushing a little bit past it, getting a little bit better, and moving a little bit closer towards that like unattainable future self that is like good at art in like the holistic sense.
Hey, Pia.
Hello.
I didn't want to interrupt that. It sounded like you were
I'm going to roll.
on a little journey. How are you?
Doing good. Doing great.
Good. So, I have I don't know if it's a question or what, but
Sure.
I would go through like a time that you knew you were a pretty good artist. That's what I picked up from the last person. She said, you're getting pretty good at this art thing. And then I started thinking about it. Like, I'm a pretty good artist. Like, I can draw. I don't like to call myself an artist though, because I don't like my own art. Have you ever done that? Have you ever felt that way about your art? Like, not now, obviously, but like, I don't feel like I like the style of the way that I draw.
Yeah, I don't know. I like, I've had different moments. Like, there have been times where I've got really bad handwriting. There have been moments where I was like, oh, wow, all my handwriting has really got its own idiosyncrasies. And I kind of love the fact that it's not really legible and it's kind of doing its own thing or whatever. And there's times where I feel the same way about my art, where it's like, I see all the weird little idiosyncrasies kind of happening on their own. And I'm just enjoying the fact that there is something unique about it that I get to participate in. But then there's plenty of other times where I just look at it and I go like, sure is flat and boring and bad in every possible way. Just like it lacks all the flavor that I see in other people's work, and it, it's lacking the precision and technique of people who are much better studied than me. I have access to my own failings like much more intimately than anybody else has. I have expectations for my work that no one has ever seen. And so I'm comparing it against like the unseen expectations. And I'm ultimately going to feel much more down on every single piece of my work that I make, even my very best stuff, than anybody who's a critic. Because like I've got special material that they don't have that allows me to judge it more harshly. And like I don't think I've ever met an artist who's like, I love my style. I mean, maybe they are that way and they've just been keeping it to themselves. Instead, it's like an incredibly common narrative that artists are critical of their own style, seeing its shortcomings. Like, I don't think while it's really common, I don't think it's particularly productive to feel that way. I mean, likewise, it's not really productive to just decide that you're the greatest artist ever and that everything you do is your genius. One of the artists that people have always made fun of is Rob Liefeld. I don't know if you know who that is. He's a comic book artist who was really popular in the 90s. He had this very distinctive style. And he has been widely mocked for most of my adult life as being just flatly bad at drawing. And yet Rob Liefeld. Yeah, but the thing is that he made millions and millions of dollars. He was the most sought after comic book artist in all of comics. He created a number of popular characters, including Deadpool, who's very popular these days. But the thing is that Rob Liefeld's bad at drawing and most things. He is like particularly bad at anatomy, which was really funny because all the thing he was famous for was drawing these, dynamic comic book characters from imagination.
Looking at him right
now.
now.
Yeah, especially he couldn't draw feet. So he would like always have his characters standing on their tiptoes, or like they'd be standing in a cloud of mist or whatever. And there's these very famous drawings of his that are just mocked over and over and over again. But the thread I saw on Twitter was a really talented artist who was saying, Rob Liefeld gets shit on constantly for being bad at drawing. But the fact of the matter is that he was incredibly popular during his era because there's like an incredible amount of dynamism to his work. Like there's an enthusiasm and a passion and an energy that runs to the work that is infectious. And like, you can tell that like, yeah, this guy maybe didn't know what the anatomy on his characters was exactly, but he was really excited to be drawing those characters. And he was really excited to like portray this big over the top energy. And he was really into what he was making. You can see, even if you can't see like a super high level of like technical skill, you can see a tremendous amount of passion. And that passion, carried over into being massively popular. He was an incredibly popular and successful artist due to his obvious infectious love for his subject matter. And so it didn't matter that he had a weird style or that he stunk at art. Like all that really fell by the wayside when it came to him doing his primary job, which was to just be stoked for art every single time he drew something. And I think that, after a certain number of years of like, burning himself out at comics and, dealing with criticism and stuff, he making comics stopped being his primary profession so much. But like during his heyday, it was his heyday because it was like, he just loved it. And like,
You think he
didn't
ever
really
to try to get better? Like, or do you think like once he realized that people liked it the way that it was, he just made at like,
I think he just was making it and like he made it the way he wanted to make it. And I think that he probably was aware of a lot of the criticism and he probably just blew it off. I think justifiably, what's the point? I mean, that's kind of where I've been. Me talking about having never really studied art prior to like this year doing studies. Like part of it comes from like the same sort of place I imagine Rob Liefeld was coming from, which is that, you know, I was making art the way I wanted, and I was able to finish paintings because I learned a process that, you know, I studied enough to develop a process that allowed me to like finish stuff regularly. And, you know, so I was doing the kind of work that I wanted, and I was able to take it all the way to the point where I could deliver it. I'm selling prints, I'm getting commissions. And why should I bother following along with what other people's expectations of what good art is if I'm getting what I want out of it? And that did excellent things for me as well. But then, you know, I've often thought about ways in which I want to be better or more skilled as an artist. And so now I'm going and spending some time on that as well. So I wouldn't say that one of them is necessarily the correct approach and one of them is incorrect. But I think that culturally within the art world, people tend to overemphasize on this idea of being a good artist. And, you know, that there is like such a thing as like a better and a worse artist, and that there's objective quality and all that kind of stuff. That I think that ultimately leads people away from just embracing the stuff that they're good at and the stuff they genuinely like and making things in their own way, which can have a huge value. I mean, personal value, but also commercial value, both together.
I don't feel like I make art so much as I make things that look like other things on paper. You know what I mean? It's just you can draw.
It's up to you to find it.
I know. I don't know, but I was just looking for I don't know, a little validation that not everybody feels that way. I think I got.
I mean,
a little out of that.
It's like, thing is like, I would say, number one, don't be harming yourself about it. But also, like, if there's something that you want to get out of your art that you're not getting, I would say it's more than healthy to aspire to do unique things you've never accomplished before. Like, if there's something you want out of your work you haven't been able to pull off, like, see what you can do to define what that thing is. Like,
Yeah, other people like the things that I make. I don't feel any kind of attachment to it. It's like if you had a baby and you didn't like your baby, you know, and everybody else thinks your baby's the Gerber baby, you know. Not everybody, but some people say your baby's pretty good looking, you know. And then that's how I feel about it. And
that's normal. That's just like it's like it would be nice for everyone to just be passionately excited about the thing they want to make and always be getting that kind of validation. But it's like there's a certain amount of self-assessment that's always going to be negative. You're just always going to lag behind other people in the appreciation of your own work. Like, even if you made the best painting of your life, it's something that you would be proud of on your deathbed. When you were finished with it, you'd probably be half an
meh. Yeah.
I've grown to appreciate my work way more looking back on it in the rear view. 10 years, that gives a way better perspective on whether or not a piece of art is any good.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely glad I kept my sketchbooks, because when you look back and see how you drew before compared to how you're making art now, it's really helpful to process the fact that you do all right, you know.
I get the experience sometimes where I look back on something I drew 10 years ago and I go like, God, I'm never going to be able to draw like that again. Like, that's when I was coming up with all the good ideas, and now I'm just imitating myself. You know, but like, there's a lot of artists that feel that way when they look back over their older work and they go, oh my God, this was actually good. No wonder people wanted to buy this from me. It was great at the time. Too bad I can't do that anymore. I don't know what it is where that inspiration came from or how to access it again.
I get that too. I get that too sometimes. It's like you remember something that you thought of that was really cool, and you're like, where the hell did that come from, and why? Yeah. Yep.
So you may not feel amazing about the work that you're creating right now, but the you that you're going to be 10 years from now might look back on it and go like, I can't believe I was so down on myself. This stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
Hard to say.
It's like when you see a picture of yourself when you thought you were fat, and you're like, I wish I was fat then, like I'm fat now. Now like it was then. But yeah, no, that's actually really good. Those I think were the words that I probably needed to hear today. Hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, you don't get to get full perspective on it. You know, again, one of the big questions I always get asked is like, how do you know when your art is done? And I'm always like, oh, when I have absolutely nothing left to contribute to it. Like and it usually, like, I can tell a piece is done, not because I'm sick of it, but because like it's just like everything looks kind of like gray and bland and flat. And it's like I've lost the ability to have more ideas of what I want to get out of it. You know, I've just lost all perspective on, you know, I've drained it of all the dissatisfaction where I feel like, oh, I'm dissatisfied with these elements of it. I should fix them. But now that I've fixed them, I don't get satisfaction. I simply am left with, you know, without any, you know, bioavailable dissatisfaction. So I'm just like a lack of dissatisfaction is the closest that I get at the moment when I'm done with it. And that's fine. But it's like, you know, it's not like I think what everyone's aiming for. I think they want to feel like awesome and proud. Really, like a lack of dissatisfaction is kind of a low bar. But, you know, I also enjoy letting other people be my critics. You know, I like to see, hey, is somebody actually like this? You know, when somebody is, you know, when people are giving nice comments, and, you know, when my wife likes the painting, like when friends tell me that they think this is my best work or whatever, I go, oh, what, really? And, you know, I get to, you know, and then at 5-10 years down the line, I get a fresh look at it. And I go, oh, okay, I guess there was something happening there. But like at the moment when I'm doing it, like, I don't know, it's like, it's just done. And so I got to move on and do something else.
Yeah. I think I'm going to try to do some finding style exercises for myself.
Yeah, I think when it comes to finding style, the thing I'd say it's worked best is, we were talking earlier about, oh, how long do you take on studies? And I'm like, oh, I usually take 2 hours because I've been so bad at it. But like when I'm working with people on trying to help them develop their art style, I try to get them to make the most amount of art that they can fit into their week. So it's usually 7 paintings a week. And trying to get them to finish just a tremendous, like a huge, overwhelming amount of art. Like during a very short span of time. Like there's a lot about style that is about taking shortcuts. And to figure out where you have like these weird little shortcuts built into your brain, it can be really helpful to try to see how quickly you can work. And working under extreme duress can be a really great way to access your sense of style.
Well, I wanted to come up and say hi. I haven't talked to you in a while, and thank you. And thank you, Celeste, and thank you, Chaos, for those 2 things. And I'm going to take a look at those. I hope you have a great weekend. I will see you next week.
And see you next week. Good one. I don't know what these brushes are. Looking for something that's a little chunky. Like it's like charcoal pencil. Yeah, hit it. Yeah, yeah. I one of the things I would often do when I was doing mentorships with people, it was like a big chunk of what they were coming to me for was like, hey, you have this style that I really like. How can you teach me to paint that style? And I would always tell them, I'm not going to teach you how to paint my style because it doesn't really work like that. But I would work with them instead to try to help them to try to teach them to paint like themselves. And what that added up to was, you know, trying to get them to make a ton of artwork, and then they would start to skip all these things that they were doing out of a sense of obligation because they just ran out of time. And the stuff that would get left over would turn into like the defining points of their style that they would then build on. So trying to make daily paintings from scratch every day it would usually take about 3 months. So doing that for 3 months straight, um, usually results in somebody getting to developing their own style if they're stuck. For me, my style is like, because I was always just sort of creatively, like being creatively selfish, it kind of sort of unfolded on its own. So I was always, just trying to like make myself happy with how I was working. See, legacy brushes. It's in here. Store the legacy brush sets in the list of brush presets. It's in here. Legacy brushes. Oh my God, there's a whole bunch. Basic brushes, default brushes. Let's see, can I get this to be bigger? Look at all these in here. Oh my God, there are so many. Oh, I think this chalk brush, this might be the one that I'm always stealing. This is it. I always tell people this is a default Photoshop brush and they're talking about. But this is it. So chalk brush, and then I do my little brush magic on it. So I'm gonna go to brush settings here. I'm gonna say shape dynamics, size control from pen pressure. Yeah. I'm gonna turn the flow way down, turn the opacity up. Oh God. Ooh, what is happening here? This looks pretty ugly. Let's dual brush this a little bit. Oh goodness. Preview of it is not showing much, but so weird. Because it's like making these thin little marks, and then when I press, I go over it. It's creating these, like, blobs of value. I've got to go back and look through my brush settings to see what really made all this stuff work the way that it did. Are you looking? I don't think that the dual brush is being influenced by pressure sensitivity too much. Maybe it's not dual brush. We got about 20 minutes till I'm getting out of here. So if anybody has any other questions about their artistic journey or process or whatever, I'm here for you. Let's get rid of smoothing. Like smoothing. What are we looking at here? So streaky. Flow too low? Wait. I think I do want a little bit. I think maybe that's why it is. Oh, look at that. Okay, yeah, that's sort of like I'm in line with where we're headed with this. I think I just had the wrong dual brush. This is like, it's sort of two brushes that are, eh, it's only making a mark with a brush hits both of them simultaneously. So it's like, adds a little additional texture on top of the shape of the tool mark itself. And I only got a handful to choose from. This one's pretty good. Let's look at this like odd streaky coming through. That's that's very chalky looking at the edges. Interesting. let's just call it here. First things first, I'm going to build up a little bit of the values. I don't really want to replicate this background too much because it's not really what I'm focused on. See, that was an errant mark that the tablet decided it was going to make a mark. I wonder if it was actually my wrist touching the touchpad. So I'm gonna keep the AI halo here. AI image generators love giving people halos. You can see like there's the circle behind the head that is. I thought at first like, oh, I love that. I'm gonna do that all the time, and then I realized that doing that was like a surefire way to make it look like you were actually just an AI and not a person. Maybe I will do that. But as a little nod to the AI roots on this study here, I think I might have that be the composition.
Designer, you're up. If you're trying to talk, you're muted.
Taking a moment from rambling here, just in case you want to butt in. Feel free to jump in at any point.
I guess not. It'll just keep popping up for a second before I can even go to click them.
I wonder, is it like a bot, do you think? Or maybe people are just like spontaneously regretting their choice or raise their hand?
I think some people think that they need to like tap it multiple times or something. So it makes it flash. And click it once and it will stay raised.
Use some lighter proportioning here. More like major. It's the sort of thing you typically do earlier on in the process, but feeling a little lost early on, so I'm do a little bit here late. Good. Even on days where I'm feeling like I'm struggling a little bit, not entirely getting what I want out of my art, there is something really satisfying once it does start to come together later in the at the end. So like, even on days where I'm like having a really hard time when I'm jumping into it, I find that by the end of the piece, as it starts to like congeal into something that I'm a little more proud of, I end up being left with a really positive feeling. And I think that's one of the reasons I keep coming back to it. It's like, if my last experience with the thing is one of like feeling really positive, that it's going to lead me back there over and over again, rather than leaving with like a negative experience right at the end every single time. People have a bias towards like their last experience with a thing. So if your last experience with something was negative, you really have to push past it to like re-engage with them again. While if your last experience with something was positive and on a high note, then it's going to be easier to want to jump back in, deal with it again. So yeah, it can be one of those things where it's like whenever you're on group of people that you want to like you, just always make sure you always end on a high note. We've all got our little biases. But yeah, there's something about the bias built in with art where it's like, when I'm finishing a painting, taking it to like all the way to finish, I do leave it in a state where I feel a little bit like a little bit empty, a little bit cold on it because I've just spent so much time with it. Sometimes 40 hours with a single piece of art can make me feeling a little bit like, overexposed to it. But on a short study, whether it's like an hour or 2 hours, and if at the end I'm like feeling really real good about the things that I learned and like the look of the overall thing, that it just makes me want to jump into it again the next day and do more of them. So it's nice that like it's at the end of the piece here that I find that I start to get this sense of like positivity and satisfaction. Because if I was ending on the state where I start with, where I don't know if I would have kept up with it. It's like, it can be so frustrating at the beginning, feeling so lost. It's like when you start to enjoy the accumulation of all your good choices, that's what starts to actually feel really, really good. A kind of a value rough here that I like decently. So I might add a little bit of color to it here in the last 10 minutes. One of my tricks is these gradient maps. And I'll just pick something like this. Crazy colors. And, when we start to have blending modes to those crazy colors, we start to get some interesting stuff to happen. And one of the great things about gradient maps is you can go into the properties tab, come in here and start to monkey around with it however you like. And see a little bit of a general preview of what the outcome of my choices are over here. Oh, I see. I've got this thing inverted. I was wondering, it was looking a little straight. The shadows are down here. Let's put something in here. Add some interest. In the top end, we've got these blues. Ooh, look at that. Starting to get some tone to the face and stuff. Throw it down. So it's not replicating what we're seeing in the image over here. What we are getting out of this is a difference in temperature between the highlights and shadows. So you can see we've got these bluer colors towards the highlights, and they start contributing to making the some of the lit areas a little cooler, while all of these shadows, of which we have many, are all in this sort of like warm yellows and oranges. Might even try to keep this up a little bit. Can we have slightly more saturated color? And this isn't a color palette all on its own, but it could be an interesting base for creating something. So if we turn it all the way up, this is it up at 100%. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit, and you can see it's starting to bring out some of the darker shadowed areas to give us a little structure with that. And then we can start to add in some stuff like we wanted to add in some cool tones for where we have all this leather. And you can see I just started painting in some blue on the hard light blending mode. And we start to get some of that cool leather in there. And we're going to do it in a really messy way. What we want is a lot of accidental stuff that's bringing out cool moments that we can kind of discover for ourselves inside all the different bits. And then we want some warm skin tone. And the warm skin tone is behaving a little differently on the areas. So as I said before, the gradient map is adding in a little bit of coolness into the highlights. So even though we're putting this orange over the top of everything, the areas where we have those highlights are going to end up a little cooler, while the shadows are going to remain a little bit warmer. And so we could do the same thing we have in the reference and keep a little bit of orange hair. Or we could decide to change it dramatically. Felt like we wanted something different out of it. I go a little darker, a little less intense. And then if we want to bring some yellows in, some of this like background stuff, bring some of that over the top. I'm going to try to just hit it with one big chunky mark here with some rough edges. One of the things I'm looking at in the reference here is simply where do we see a certain amount of temperature change between the different elements? Because it's more important that we match the temperature changes than it is that we match the colors specifically. So going warm to cool, even if it produces surreal results, is going to be important to reproducing the overall look and feel of this, more so than trying to make sure that red hair is red or whatever. If you can match all of the temperature transitions, you can get everything wrong about the color and it's all going to look great. Even if you're colorblind. I mean, that's one of the tricks I would say is like applicable to any artist, but if you're colorblind, making sure that you get those temperature transitions right. Somebody says, hey, what the hell? Like, why is this thing over here green? Instead of being going, oh no, I'm colorblind. It caught me. You just be like, oh, I meant to put it that way because I'm more focused on color temperature. And you get to like one up them that way. Tell them that actually you're better at art. You know better. So they're actually willing for criticizing you. It's very convenient, on top of being generally a good idea. So, um, we are very close to where I wanted to end this, and we are at 5 o'clock. Thanks everyone who joined me for today's haphazard stream. Um, I'm really happy with how things turned out, considering that this is I'm working without my brushes or panels or settings or version of Photoshop that I normally use. Um, if you're ever working with tools that you're not familiar with, it'll always slow you down, but it'll never break your ability to go ahead and have fun with art. Thanks everyone who came on stage. Thanks HQ Chaos for doing the administration as always. And you know what? I normally don't do this, but I'd say thanks to the Midjourney team for having me on here and allowing me to spend some time on your Discord server rambling at you about my favorite things having to do with art process and learning, being an artist. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be here every single week. And yeah, I'm gonna be back again next week, every Tuesday, just about the same time. And if you want to join me between now and then, come check out my Discord server. All the info about my educational stuff is over on my website, vandalhigh.com. You can get a link to the Discord server from there. You can also find links to some of my tool presets and art resources and where to buy a tablet, all that kind of fun stuff. So thanks so much, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.